Welcome to the Coupler.io Academy, where industry experts share tips and tricks on working with data. In this video, we're going to teach you how to use Looker Studio. Hi, my name's Josh. If you're just getting started with Looker Studio, you couldn't have found a better place. In this video, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to start building your first reports. I'll share plenty of practical examples, and in the process, we'll build an interactive, auto-updating Looker Studio dashboard. Sounds like a plan? Let's get into it. To build any kind of data visualization, you need to access your data. This is when connectors come into play. You use connectors to, well, connect to the data from hundreds of different apps, data warehouses, datasets, or even files. Once the first data starts flowing in, it forms a data source. This is where the data for your reports resides. Finally, you connect the data sources to reports to visualize that data. Okay, enough with the theory, let's get to a practical example. I'll fetch data from my Facebook ads account and visualize it in a good-looking dashboard. If you'd like to follow along with me but don't have access to a Facebook ads account, you can grab our dummy data file from the description of this video and follow along. Looker Studio offers two types of connectors. Google connectors mostly support other Google services like Sheets, GA4, and more. Partner connectors, on the other hand, allow you to connect to hundreds of services, including also Facebook ads. To get my Facebook data, I'll use Coupler.io, a data automation and analytics platform with over 200 integrations. I'll connect my Facebook ads account and choose to fetch some basic set of fields like impressions, clicks, and so on. Here's the preview of my dataset. I can transform it now and, for example, import only the ads that cost me $150 or more. Then I'll connect and authorize Looker Studio so I can load data automatically using Coupler.io. And here's the imported data source in Looker Studio. You'll be able to see the list of fields to the left. Next, there are data types that you could have selected in Coupler.io or have Looker Studio auto-detect them. It's important to check that all fields have the right types, as it could otherwise hinder your analytical capabilities. For example, if a numerical field is set as text, you won't be able to aggregate it. Once everything checks out, click the Create Report button and agree to add the data to your report. Looker Studio will aim to build the first chart for you, but more often than not, the chart won't be any helpful. So let's get rid of it. Now, let's have a look around. You can use the Add a Chart button in the menu to do precisely that. You can choose from a number of options like tables, scorecards, line or bar charts, maps of all sorts, you name it. Through the Add Data button, you can set up a new connector or use an already connected data source for this report. Your report starts with a single page, but you can add additional pages if you'd like, up to the limit of 100 pages. For easier navigation, it's best to name each page. I'll call this one Overview and actually delete the second page. One is enough for now. To the right, you can see the connected data source with all of its fields. You can drag and drop them onto the report to add more data to charts or even create brand new charts. In the Theme and Layout menu, you can adjust the look of your report. Choose from one of the templates and customize it to your liking. Inspect the layout settings to, for example, change the display mode of your report. You can switch between the view mode you use to preview your report and the edit mode you use to make any changes. Also, on the top of your screen, you'll find various sharing options, but we'll discuss them towards the end of this video. Now let's add the first chart. I'll go with a simple table, although at this point the possibilities would be endless. Click the Add a Chart button to add a new table. In the chart panel, you can see the data source used for the chart. Dimensions are what you group the data by. Here it's the campaign names that make sense for my analysis. Metrics are aggregated fields that describe dimensions. Here, Looker Studio had an idea to sum up the IDs of my ads, which, if you ask me, Doesn't make much sense. So let's swap it for something more meaningful. I'll add impressions and clicks, and add a third one called the click-through rate, which is calculated by dividing the number of impressions by the number of clicks. Give it a moment to load, and there you go. Double-click on the borders between columns to have Looker Studio adjust their width. Now let's take a closer look at the metrics. Each field you add to a chart has its own settings. Here you can add a display name for that field. Note that it will only affect this particular chart. Everywhere else, the field will still go by its original name. For metrics, choose the aggregation method. Plenty of options are available. Optionally, update the data type, choosing the numbers to be displayed as percentages or currencies, for instance. At first glance, my chart seemed fine, but now I realise that something is off with the click-through rate column. The values are way too optimistic to be true. Indeed, the click-through rates for every ad inside a campaign were summed up. It makes more sense to return an average CTR across a campaign instead. Let's change it, and also update the label to avoid any further confusion. This metric will also make more sense as a percentage. You can sort the table by a particular column by simply pressing on its label. This will sort the data in descending order. Press one more time to get the ascending sort. It's worth mentioning that any sorting you arrange this way will reset the next time a report is refreshed or loaded anew. To set up a permanent sorting method, scroll down through the chart pane and set up the desired sorting method. You can also style each chart separately. For example, let's change the header background color to green. Below the chart, you'll see the number of rows displayed on a single page and the total number of returned rows. My table only has 4 rows, so it doesn't really matter, but when working with hundreds or thousands of rows in a table, you might need to adjust the pagination settings. You'll find them in the chart settings pane too. Jump between pages using the arrows in the bottom right corner of the chart. Alright, let's add another chart to explore more features. I'll choose to add another chart, but this time the version with a heat map. And here you go. Looker Studio guessed right that I wanted to look into ad sets this time, so I'll leave the dimension as it is. For metrics, I want to see the sum of clicks for each ad set. You're free to add the same field to a chart multiple times, but why would you do that though? To aggregate the data by different functions in a single chart. To do that, drag and drop the field into the metric section as many times as you need. Then adjust the aggregation method. I'm okay with sum in the first field, and for the second, I'll pick the average. And for the third one, let's get the maximum number of clicks and ad received. Looking at the chart, it's hard to tell which column returns what. Let's adjust the label then. There we go, that's much better. I want to add one more field to my chart. I wish to count how many ads ran within each ad set. To do that, it's common to use the ID field, as they're by definition unique. By counting the number of IDs for each ad set, I can return precisely what I need. Let's adjust the label too, so it's clear what the column represents. Now that is a lot of data on a small chart. Let's adjust the column width and expand the chart a bit. Coloured highlights are useful for comparing values and spotting ups and downs. But to have them, you don't need to use this particular chart. You can also add colour patterns on a regular table using conditional formatting. One way to use it is by setting up a condition. For example, I want to highlight the campaigns that received more than 2,000 clicks. I will opt to highlight the entire row, but I could just colour a particular field. Another way is with the colour scale. This method will colour cells in every row, based on how they compare to one another. You can combine different formatting rules or use a single one for more clarity. That's up to you. Looker Studio has 2 types of filters. Those that you apply to individual charts, and filters applicable to entire pages of reports. Let's focus on the former. To do that, I'll go back to my first chart. I want to look into individual ads running in my Facebook ads account, so I add the ad name field. However, since I have multiple ads with the same name, I also need to add the ID field. Otherwise, Looker Studio would aggregate the data for each unique ad name rather than each ad separately. Let's adjust the table so that everything fits in nicely. To add a filter to this chart, scroll down through the chart pane and click Add a Filter. Next, set up a condition. I want to include only ads that had more than 80 clicks. You can set up multiple criteria and look for rows that meet all of them, or perhaps any of them. I'll settle for a simple filter this time. Give it a moment to load, and there you go. From the initial 171 ads, only 29 meet the chosen condition. Everything else was filtered out. If you don't name your filter, it will be saved with a very vague name, like clicks here. It's a good practice to reuse filters across different charts, rather than create them for each chart separately. Therefore, it's better to give them more meaningful names, like I'm doing here. At any time, you can review your list of filters through the respective menu. Here, you can duplicate or delete them, or simply review what you have previously set up. Perhaps a filter you were about to add already exists. Now, let's talk about a second type of filter, the ones that apply to charts on an entire page. They typically go on top of a page, so let's make some space there. Such filters are known as controls. You add them from another menu on top. These can be, for example, drop-down lists, input boxes, checkboxes, or others. Unlike chart-specific filters, controls are displayed on a report and give users control over what's displayed on a report. This is what makes reports truly interactive. I'll pick a drop-down list and place it in the top right corner of the report. If you click on the drop-down list, you'll see all values found in the chosen control field. Here, for example, are all my ad sets. On the right, you can see the aggregated metric for each value. You can choose to only display data for one specific value on the list. Mark the checkboxes to add more values to the selection, or check the box on top to again display all data. I want to filter by campaigns, and I will adjust the display name. Looker Studio insists on summing up my CTR values, but I won't allow it. I want to display the sum of clicks for each campaign. Let's duplicate the drop-down list and give users an option to also filter by an ad name. And let's add one more control, a date range control. Date range control allows users to only display data from between particular dates. It's useful for when you wish to, for example, see the results for last month, or always have the last 7 days view when you load the report. You can select fixed dates or opt for one of the presets. Try the advanced option to, for example, display only the last 30 days worth of data, including today. I'll go for the last quarter and apply. It's worth noting that whatever you choose directly on the control will be reset the next time a report is loaded or refreshed. It makes sense because different users could be looking at the report at the same time and analyzing different periods of time. To set up a default date range, use the pane to the right. The chosen range will be used every time you or someone else opens the report. Now, you may have noticed that I keep changing the date range, but the data doesn't change. Is something wrong with my data? Not exactly. A data source can have multiple date fields, and Looker Studio doesn't really know which one to use in your filters. However, it won't tell you that up front. Instead, it will just keep refreshing the same data until you figure out that something is wrong. So, how to fix it? Well, it depends. When working with Google connectors, you'll need to set up a data range dimension in the report settings. For partner connectors, you'll typically do it directly at the source. In Coupler.io, click to edit your importer. From the destination settings, choose the field you want to use as the data range dimension and run the importer. Back in Looker Studio, click the 3 dots and choose to refresh data. This will reload all data on your report, and you'll quickly see that the date selection is finally respected. Success! As a side note, you can use the refresh button every time you think your data may be outdated. Looker Studio will check at the source, and if anything fresh is available, it will fetch it for you within seconds. Alright, let's continue with some charts. I'll try a GeoChat and drop it right here. As you'll notice right away, something is wrong. In fact, the geo dimension is missing. Clicking on it opens an empty list. It clearly indicates that none of the fields in my dataset have the matching type. What can I do about it? Earlier in the video, I imported just a basic set of fields to simplify my analysis. However, Facebook Ads API offers dozens more fields you can fetch with just a few clicks. Back in Coupler.io, open the importer settings and find the list of columns. Open the drop-down menu and add the fields you wish to fetch into Looker Studio. Oh, here's the country field. That will be perfect for my GeoChart. Now run the importer and let's jump back to our report. The new field won't appear right away in the data pane. I'll need to refresh the fields myself. To do that, I'll use the resource menu and then click Manage Added Data Sources. Let's edit my only source. In the bottom left corner of the screen, click the Refresh Fields button. Shortly, you'll see a pop-up indicating the changes to the data source. Click Apply. To use country in my GeoChart, it must have a geotype. If it imports with a different type, such as text, be sure to change it manually. Select also what exactly the field represents. In this case, a country. Approve the change and click Done, and then Close. Now you'll see country in the data pane with an icon indicating its geotype. Pull up a list of available geodimensions and select this field. You may also drag and drop the field from the data pane if you prefer. Okay, that's much better. Campaigns running in Romania seem to dominate my report at the moment. However, I'm more interested in my efforts in the Americas, so I'll switch the zoom area to that region. Let's extend the date range a bit to get more data onto the chart. Yep, that's much better. Looking at the data from Argentina, the default metric doesn't quite tell me anything useful. In fact, Looker Studio insists again on summing up the CRM values for all campaigns running in the country. Let's add a metric for this chart and select clicks instead. Yes, this will be more useful. As is the case for other charts, you can also edit the visual side of a chart. Let's update the color then to make the chart brighter. You can click on a country on a map, a row in a table, a piece of pie chart, and so on, to filter all charts on a page by that criterion. This feature is called cross-filtering. For example, selecting the United States on a map will limit the data on other charts to only American data. You can add further filters if you'd like, selecting more values on other charts. However, the data will now have to meet all these criteria to be displayed, including also the requirements from the controls above. To remove filters, click again on your selections. Alternatively, click to refresh the data for your report. Cross-filtering is available for most charts in their settings. For some, it's enabled by default, while for some others, you'll need to switch it on yourself. Now, let's add some scorecards. There are two types available: standard scorecards and scorecards with compact numbers. Let's go with the former. Scorecards display a single aggregated metric. They are really useful for monitoring the KPIs, stages of a funnel, and in many other scenarios. Let's say that I want to count impressions. Remember that I have a date range filter set up above so that the scorecard shows impressions only for that particular period. Scorecards can also show how the displayed data compares to your past performance. To enable it, click on the comparison date range. While you could select a fixed date, often a better option will be one of the provided presets. I will go with the previous period, which compares my result to those from the same period directly preceding the chosen period. For example, if my date range control shows data for the current month, the comparison will be to the last month. If I choose to display data for the last 3 days, the comparison will be to the previous 3 days, and so on. It's often faster to duplicate scorecards rather than create them from scratch, especially if you apply additional settings or change the look of scorecards. So I'll add another scorecard and track clicks this way. And one more. The blue and red lines help you position the chart in line with the existing charts, which helps keep things organized. Here, I want to track how much was spent on ads. To avoid any confusion, let's specify that the amount is in US dollars. Also, since the number no longer fits on the chart, I need to shorten it a bit. In the style settings, I'll pick compact numbers after all. Alternatively, you could just adjust the decimal precision to fit everything inside a chart. Let's add one more chart to the dashboard. I'll go with the time series chart. Right off the bat, the chart shows impression numbers for every single day in the chosen date range. This makes for some really messy charts. To make it more readable, it's worth grouping dates on the x-axis into weeks, maybe months. There is a simple way to do this in Looker Studio. Click on the calendar icon to the left of your dimension. For the date and time option, you've got plenty of options available. I'll go with monthly grouping. This looks so much better, but it's only my opinion. What if my colleagues would prefer a weekly or daily view? You don't need to create separate charts for each grouping method. You can use a feature called Drill Down to add several views users can simply swap between. I enable Drill Down, which automatically adds an identical date field to my chart. It makes sense to adjust its type to, let's say, weekly, which will create a new chart right away. When you hover on a chart, you'll now see two arrows that you can use to swap between views. Handy, isn't it? Of course, you can add more than two views so that the chart satisfies all of my colleagues' needs. Seems I may have run out of space on this page. I could create a new page and continue with charts there, but so-called one-pagers are also very popular in the Looker Studio realm, so let's adjust this page's height. To do that, go to the Page menu on top and select Current Page Settings. In the Style tab, adjust the height. For example, let's set it to 1500 pixels for this page. This should be enough for a few more charts. To adjust the default size for each new page, go to the Theme and Layout menu and Layout tab. Adjust the height or width if you wish, or choose from one of the presets. Note that this will not affect the currently existing pages. You'll need to edit those through the Page menu. My report is a bit disorganized, so let's tidy it up. Scorecards typically go on top of the page, so let's make some space there. And then adjust the other charts accordingly. Let's see it in full swing in the View mode. To share a report, you've got a few options available, and all revolve around the Share button on top. Here you see who the report is shared with. You can add new addresses by typing them in. Choose whether you want to notify them. Decide also on their access level. Viewers can only view the report, while editors can also use the edit mode to make changes to the report. Read more about the roles if you'd like. I'd share the editor access with my colleagues. Click Send to apply changes, and send a notification if you prefer notifications. You can also share a link to the report. Restricted means that only the invited users can access the report. You can also share with everyone in your organization. Alternatively, set the link to be either unlisted or public and adjust the access level. Finally, copy the link. Don't forget to save, as otherwise no changes will be applied. Through the arrow next to the Share button, you can also schedule for a PDF with your report to be sent to specified addresses. Simply pick the recipients and the desired schedule. Lastly, you can embed a report on your website. You'll find the embed code or URL in a similar section next to the Share menu. Before you go, there's one last thing you may find useful. I know building a good-looking and functional dashboard for your apps takes time and effort. At Coupler.io, we want to make it easier for you. And that's why we've developed a collection of Looker Studio templates that you can grab for free. Here's one for Facebook ads, but we have many more to choose from. To get it for yourself, click the link that appears in the corner of your screen. Choose the desired dashboard and follow its README to get set up within minutes. And that's all for today. Of course, there's plenty more to discover in Looker Studio, but we'll have to leave it for another video. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any of our content. Thank you for watching. See you around.